So what I'm going to talk about over lunch is why is planning to exit such a taboo subject? And before we get into the talk, would be really good just to get a show of hands of who is planning to exit their business in the next 3 to 5 years. Quick, grab him, David. Brilliant. Okay, perfect. Hold that thought. I'm very curious about everybody else who isn't, but we'll come on to that in a minute or two. So, a little bit of background. My name is Rachel, and I have built and sold 2 companies in healthcare. And interesting for me, the session this morning, because my background is that of a bootstrapped founder. So I've never raised. And various different thought processes around that, but have managed to exit twice, and the last one was in 2020. And my background prior to building companies was all about turnaround and transformation across public and private sector, and I spent a lot of time in healthcare. So was responsible for building the NHS app, and then as a business we built the COVID home testing, NHS jobs, and a whole raft of other national services in the UK. And after I sold my last business, and I'll talk about that in a moment or two, I really wanted to help founders to go through that process, because it felt more difficult than perhaps it should have been, and that very much was my motivation. I'm going to talk a bit about that today. So let's talk about exit. For me, with my last business, as I went into that business, I absolutely knew that I was going to be in and out in 5 years. And I knew I was going to be in and out in 5 years because I had never worked anywhere longer than 2.5 years. And I worked on the basis that if I could work for myself, I might be able to cope with 5 years. There was nothing more scientific than that. And right from the outset, the team around me were also really clear that it was the intention to grow the number rapidly from a bootstrap perspective, start selling services almost immediately, and get that exit within a 5-year period. And to achieve that, of course, what it meant is 2.5 years in, we had to be ready with the sell pack, with an idea of what the business was worth, with a valuation, to then start going out to market to warm up the market, and achieve that during that period of time. As a business, so the last business that I built, we were a healthcare consultancy. We built lots of different services for government, for UK, and we had a hell of a lot of fun along the way. So as I sold the business, we had probably 70 permanent people in the business, and a further 30 or 40 who were contractors and interims that were working as part of the organisation. And whilst everybody was clear that the strategy was growth, they were equally clear that we were planning for that exit. And this is actually, we did a retreat, I use the term loosely, in a place called Wild Forest in Essex, and we had the team there for a couple of nights, and there was various activities. I think many of us were lucky we made it out alive. And over that period of time, as a business, we we won a lot of awards for the stuff that we did in way of some of the services that we built, but also how we actually worked with clients. And for us, it was incredibly important that we really collaborated with the organisations we were working with, whether that be private sector or public or NHS departments. And this is actually for a piece of work that we did on the NHS Job Service. And the Job Service is a platform for anybody who wants to work in the NHS, and it is how they would apply into the system. And during that 5-year cycle, of course, we had a pandemic. And if you're building and running a healthcare consultancy during a pandemic, you could say it's a stroke of luck in some respects. You could also say it's a bloody nightmare from a personal perspective. And I wanted to share a story as we went through the early part of 2020. I took a phone call on a Sunday evening, and it was the Chief Clinical Information Officer for the UK, and he said, "Rach, we need to build this COVID home testing service." It was Sunday night, it was late, it was 10 p.m. That's late for me in my 40s. And he said, "Rach, we need to mobilise a team in the next 24 hours, and in 7 days we need to build a national service for COVID home testing." And at that point, there was nothing in place. And we actually mobilised three teams that ran over a 24-hour period, 7 days a week, to build out that service from a technical perspective. But we also had to work with Randox, was the lab that we were working with. We worked with Amazon because we didn't actually know at that point whether or not we could post these samples out, because we didn't know how contagious COVID was. And it's really easy to forget, now just how far and fast that has gone. But within a 7-day period, we built a national service. We put it live, and people were able to actually access these test kits. And the original plan for this was, it was all about clinicians. It was, Rach, can we get frontline staff back into hospitals, ambulance staff, etc. And then about half an hour later, which is always the way with health ministers, they then announced and said, actually, it's a national service for everybody. And we had not built it on that basis. So we hadn't built it for that scale. We hadn't built it for that amount of test kits going out. But over the first month, we actually shipped 1 million test kits out. So it was pretty rapid. And whatever people's views on politicians, and I certainly have them, this is actually a letter to one of my team from Boris, thanking them for the work that they did over that period of time in actually building out that service. And then as this journey continued, we achieved what we had wanted to achieve, which was the exit of the business within a 5-year period. And this is what I wanted to talk a bit about today. There's a massive sense of achievement in selling a business and achieving what you'd set out to achieve. There is also, lots of different emotions that go on around, identity is very much tied to the organisation that you've built and the team around you, and how do you feel about that business being sold to somebody else. And nobody walks in with a bag of cash and goes, here's a few million. Well, maybe they do, but not for reputable businesses. And so, of course, we then went through a process of earn-out and restrictions on operating in this market for a period of time. And the real kind of motivator for me, post exiting the business, I went off, as many founders do, to have a think about, what did I want to go and do next? And my lawyer at the time said to me, Rach, just go and lay on the beach for a few months. And I said, that might work for a couple of weeks, but after a short period of time, it's probably going to get a bit samey. And so what I did was I actually took the learning from the concept to the sale of the business, and I wrote a series of blogs. There's probably 15. I debated, do I actually write a book? But I think at the end of writing 16 blogs, I thought I was losing the bloody will to live. So I thought, let's just get those published, and hopefully they will be of some use to other entrepreneurs. And then I really took a period of time, probably 6 months, and I thought, why is it so hard to sell a business? And if I look at the market from a UK perspective, we've got, as we heard today, we have accelerators right at the early part of the process. We have investment, be that friends, family, pre-seed, and we have various kind of guardrails that support us through growing businesses, but when it comes time to exit, I firmly believe that there are a distinct lack of services out there that actually help founders to really maximize the value of the business, but also understand what they're in for. And that's not a kind of a scary horror movie kind of suggestion, but it is an intense process, and we are all domain experts in our respective area, and we often therefore don't have the experience of going through that exit process, and I kind of learnt, I guess, on the job with the sale of the last business. But it really prompted me to initially build out a service actually that helps founders to do some exit planning, do some exit management, and we are kicking off a cohort in November that's purely for health founders all around exit. And so today was an opportunity really just to share a bit of my story about building and selling a business, and talk a little bit around what that service looks like from a benefits and outcomes for health founders. And it looks like actually maximizing the value that you've put into the business. It's about having expert guidance from people who've been there, seen it, done it, and kind of got the t-shirt. And as a business, we refer to them as exiteers. So an exiteer is somebody who has built and sold at least a couple of businesses in a domain area. And then it's about having a look at how do you streamline your business. There's lots of different levers to have a look at that can make the business a bit cleaner and tidier from an operations and a profitability perspective. How we work as a business is we have a community of entrepreneurs that we're working with, and we're pretty intense in way of, physical get-togethers on a 6-weekly basis, but also access to an online community, master classes in certain subjects run every couple of months. But I think the single most important part of this process is about creating a roadmap with a founder or a founding team that says, like, T-minus 36 months or 5 years out, I want to actually exit the business, I want to realise this benefit, and we actually build that roadmap and we help make that a reality. So that's just a little bit around my kind of journey and experience of building and selling couple of businesses in healthcare, and I'll hand over to you to ask Any questions that you fancy about that growing and scaling journey, or around the exit strategy, exit readiness?